Why is it so exhausting to listen to someone you actually like talk nonstop about the latest political outrage, social issue, opinion cycle, or their work or family problems, even when you're not arguing back? I don't mean strangers online. I mean friends, people you care about, people you otherwise enjoy being around. And you're sitting there quietly listening, not even pushing back, not escalating, just absorbing it, and somehow you walk away more drained than if you had argued. That's the part that used to confuse me. Because on the surface, it looks harmless. It's just talking, just opinions, just processing the world. But it doesn't feel neutral in your body. It feels taxing, like something is being pulled from you without permission. And the reason isn't disagreement, it's misalignment. What's actually happening in those moments is not a conversation about the topic at hand. The topic is just the carrier wave. What you're really listening to is unresolved emotional load being routed through whatever issue happens to be emotionally charged that week. Politics, moral certainty, someone else's stupidity, some group that's ruining everything. The issue changes, the energy doesn't. And here's the thing that's uncomfortable to admit. A lot of these people aren't being fake. They're sincere. They genuinely feel activated. They genuinely feel like this matters. But sincerity is not the same thing as orientation. What you're feeling, sitting there quietly, is the cost of being pulled into the wrong time layer. Old grief, old anger, old losses, old powerlessness, stuff that never got integrated when it happened. So it keeps leaking forward into the present, hitching itself to whatever story will justify staying activated. That's why someone can be furious today about something that has almost no direct impact on their actual lived life and feel completely justified doing it. From their perspective, they're engaged. From yours, it feels like noise. Because you're in the present, and they're not. And this is where it gets especially hard when it's someone you like. You don't want to shut them down. You don't want to correct them. You don't want to turn every hangout into a debate. So you listen, quietly, patiently. You nod, you let them talk, you tell yourself it's not worth it. But your nervous system is still paying the bill. Because even silent participation is still participation. You're still lending attention. You're still lending regulation. You're still acting as an unconsenting stabilizer for someone else's unresolved loop. And over time, that adds up. What makes this harder is that it doesn't just cost you in the moment. It starts to cost the friendship. Because you begin to associate that person with a certain kind of weight. Not them, necessarily, but the version of them that shows up when they're activated. And slowly, without any argument, without any conflict, you start to pull back. You're less excited to make plans. You take a little longer to respond. You find reasons to keep the hangout short. Not out of resentment, out of self-preservation. And the tricky part is certain people are far more susceptible to this than others. If you tend to be empathic, introspective, or someone who actually listens, you absorb more. You're not just hearing words, you're tracking the emotion underneath them. You're feeling the weight of what isn't being said. And that kind of attunement, which is actually a gift, becomes a liability in one-sided emotional environments. So the withdrawal isn't weakness, it's your nervous system setting a boundary your mouth never did. The relationship doesn't end dramatically, it just quietly contracts. Here's the line that matters: help requires invitation. If someone is not asking to examine how they're organizing their reactions, if they're just broadcasting certainty, there is nothing for you to do there. Engagement won't create clarity, it will only create more momentum. That's why even disagreement doesn't feel like the real issue. You could disagree politely, you could even agree, and it would still feel wrong. Because the exhaustion isn't intellectual, it's structural. You're watching someone spend energy on things that don't move their life forward, and you can feel, viscerally, that your attention is being siphoned into something that has no resolution. That's why it's so tempting to disengage entirely. Not because you don't care, but because you care about orientation. A lot of people don't yet realize that attention is a finite resource. They treat it like an endless moral obligation. If something is loud enough, emotional enough, or framed as important enough, they think it deserves engagement. It doesn't. Some people organize their lives around progress. Others organize their lives around activation. And activation can feel meaningful right up until you notice that nothing is actually changing. So the moral here isn't cut people off or don't care about others. It's simpler and harder. You're not obligated to participate in misalignment just because someone you like is stuck there. You are allowed to choose silence without guilt. You are allowed to choose distance without hostility. You are allowed to protect your attention without explaining yourself. Because orientation precedes obligation. And the question you eventually have to ask yourself isn't whether their topic is right or wrong. It's this: how much of your energy and attention are you willing to spend quietly absorbing one-sided conversations?